Okay, Stephen, you can go ahead.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Before we start the meeting, I would like to read a land acknowledgement. The land on which we meet has been here for time immemorial. People have inhabited Southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we acknowledge the neutral people, the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee. People who lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. At this time, I'd like to remind the committee and members of the public that this meeting is being live recorded and live streamed via the township's YouTube channel. Anyone who is registered to participate in this meeting will be invited to speak in the order of the applications being heard. I will now do a roll call of the committee for the benefit of the public watching the meeting. When I call your name, please wave at the camera and say here or present. I, Stephen Hartman, am present and chairing the meeting. Committee members and staff, Linda Dixon, sorry.
Sorry about that. Present.
Thank you, Linda. Chris Fletcher.
Present.
Charles Zeidler.
Sorry, present.
Thank you, Charles. Staff, David Gundrum, planner.
Present.
Nancy Thompson, secretary treasurer.
Present.
And we welcome Aaron Wessel, staff as well.
Present.
Thank you, Aaron. I will now provide an explanation of the procedures for this meeting. Each application will be read by Nancy, and she will ask each application to make a brief presentation, not to exceed 5 minutes. The committee will be given an opportunity to question the application and the applicant. Any other person who has registered with the recording secretary and is wishing to address an application, either for or against, will be given an opportunity to speak at this time as well. Please make sure you have turned on your microphone and video and identify yourself clearly for the recording secretary. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, the committee will make a decision on the application. Once discussion on your application is complete, please mute your microphone and turn off the video. You are free to leave the meeting at this time or remain on and listen to the balance of the applications. The applicants are advised that each application has a 20-day appeal period as required under the Planning Act in accordance with Bill 23, which received royal assent on November 28th of 2022. Appeals may be submitted by the applicant, the municipality, certain public bodies, and the minister. The last day of appeal for the applications here today will be September the 6th, 2023. At this time, I will ask any member of the committee if they have or are declaring a pecuniary interest with any of the applications.
No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward. I will ask Nancy to read the first application.
Thanks, Stephen. The first application this evening is minor variance A22-2023 for Rosendale Farms Limited for the property at 544 Sawmill Road. The property is zoned agricultural with site-specific provisions in section 26.1.302 and contains a single detached dwelling and an agricultural cash crop facility. The applicant is proposing to reconfigure the 3-hectare area of operation for the agricultural cash crop facility in order to facilitate additional grain dryers to be added to the operation. The applicant is looking to add an approximate 0.5 hectare area, 29.5 meter by 152 meter strip to the rear of the existing area of operation in place of a 0.5 hectare triangular area located at the southwest corner adjacent to Sawmill Road. And Mac is here from Mac, and I believe you said Brad or Brian or both from Rosendale Farms to speak to the application.
Yeah, I guess our goal here is just to add more area out to the back of the property, putting a future grain dryer out there away from the road, away from neighboring properties, houses. there's really no room elsewhere on our property that we can have this. So pushing this all the way out the back is really the best spot for this. Don't know what, how much more information you need here, but if you have, do you have the diagrams in front of you, everyone?
Okay, thank you. At this time, I guess I'll ask the members of the committee if they have any questions for the applicant. Any questions from committee members to the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Nancy, was there any members of the public registered to speak about this application?
There were none registered for this application, Stephen.
Okay. Any further questions from committee members before I ask them how they want to deal with this? Okay, committee, how would you like to handle this application?
Stephen?
Yes, Chris?
I have one question before I'm willing to move the recommendation, but just a clarification from David with respect to the site-specific planning requirements, and do they require a development agreement of some kind, or how is a farm property dealt with differently than a regular commercial industrial kind of property?
Through the chair, Member Fletcher, it's a good question. So the property, depending on the extent of the development that would occur in the future, it may or may not trigger a site plan agreement under site plan control. So there would potentially be another step in the process here once the new area of operation is established to open up that space. So depending on the form of development, they may need to go through site plan control before they can secure a building permit, or have a building permit issued rather.
So there's no site plan on this property right now?
Not currently, no.
Okay, good enough. But this could trigger the potential for one. That's what you're saying to me. That's what I hear you saying.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Chair Hartman, I am willing to move the recommendation as printed. If you want me to read it out, I can, but I don't feel that it's necessary.
Okay, thank you. Is that sufficient, Nancy?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, we would need a seconder for that motion.
Second.
Linda? Thank you. Okay, Linda has seconded. Any discussion on the motion from committee members at all? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that is carried. Okay, thank you. I would like to remind the applicant that the last day of appeal expires on September the 6th, 2023. Thank you for participating in the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your video. Thank you. Okay, Nancy, now the next application, please.
Thanks, Stephen. The next application is minor variance application A23-2023 for Nomadic Elmira Towns Limited for the property at 15 Barnswallow Drive in Elmira. The property is zoned residential multiple with the design guidelines mixed use R7B with site-specific provisions and is currently vacant land. The applicant is proposing a mixed-use commercial and residential development on the property and is requesting relief from the following. General Regulations, Section 6.13.1B, off-street parking, to permit off-street parking spaces to be set back from a lot line adjacent to a local road, being Barnswallow Drive, a minimum of 0.5 meters, whereas 2.0 meters is required. General Regulations, Section 6.13.1C, off-streat parking, to permit off-street parking perpendicular parking spaces to have a minimum dimension of 2.75 meters by 5 wide by 5.5 meters in depth, whereas 2.75 meters by 6 meters is required. And site-specific Section 26.1.380 IIC to permit stacked townhouse uses within Part 2 of the plan to have a minimum setback of 15 meters from the west property line being Barn Swallow Drive, whereas 18 meters is required. And Scott Patterson from Patterson Planning is here to speak to the application.
Okay, Scott, please go ahead if you have a.
Yep. So good afternoon, committee. Again, Scott Patterson from Patterson Planning Consultants, representing the property owner and the proposal for development. As Nancy had noted, it is a mixed-use development, and the zoning for this project was approved by Township Council back in October of 2022. And subsequent to that, a site plan application was filed with Township staff. Through that process, it was identified that a road widening along Barn Swallow would be required. And the three variances that are before you this afternoon are directly related to that road widening. So through the rezoning process, we weren't aware of the road widening. There was a new official plan for the township. Once the site plan application was filed, this became noted. And basically the variances, as Nancy described, keep the project the way it was presented to the public and the way that it was approved by council. It keeps all of the other zoning regulations in place that would direct the form of development and allow the project to proceed. But the three variances before you reflect the road widening and what is necessary to accommodate that road widening and the conveyance of those lands to the township. So the function and form of the project remains the same. Number of parking spaces remains the same. Everything stays the same basically, except the length of the parking spaces and the setback to what will become township owned lands. So we've read the staff report. We're here in support of the project. If the variance is granted, it will allow us to continue on with the site plan application. I would note that these changes do not result in any change to the neighbors, to the immediately abutting neighbors. There's no impact to them. This is strictly towards Barn Swallow Drive. Everything else regarding setbacks for the buildings and stuff stays exactly the way it was through the public process. So if there's any questions for committee, I'd be happy to answer them. If there's anything that comes about through staff's comments through David, happy to address that as well. So here in full support and looking for support from committee as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there any members of the committee with question or questions to the applicant? Yes, Linda?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'm not sure if the applicant wants to answer this or maybe David, but I'm just, I don't have any concerns with the variances, but I note that the sidewalk's already there. So where's the road widening going to be taken and how's that? I'm just a little confused as to how that's all, because it's already there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can try and tackle that. I'm sure David will correct me if I'm wrong, but the sidewalk that you see on site now was actually constructed on private property. It encroaches onto the subject lands.
Okay.
So when Barn Swallow is reconstructed, that sidewalk will be removed and will be relocated onto the public right of way. It'll form part of Barn Swallow Drive.
Okay.
We're not sure how it happened, but yes, that sidewalk is currently on private property.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Any further questions from committee members? Is there any members of the public on the call today to speak about this application?
No, Stephen, there's no members here for this application.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Okay, committee members, how would you like to deal and handle this application?
I'll make a motion.
Charles? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll move a motion that minor variance application A23-2023, municipally known as 15 Barn Swallow Drive in Elmira, be approved.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Chris Fletcher, thank you. Any discussion from committee members about the motion? Okay, hearing none, then I'll ask the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that is carried unanimously. Okay, I'd like to remind the applicant that the last day of appeal expires on September the 6th, 2023. Thank you again for participating in the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your video. Okay, Nancy, the next application, please.
Thanks, Stephen. The next application is consent application B05-2023 for April and Nevin Martin for the property at 1441 Cedar Spring Road. The property is zoned agricultural with site-specific provisions and contains a single detached dwelling, barn, and farm sheds. The applicant is requesting permission to sever approximately 0.4 hectares from 1441 Cedar Spring Road and convey it as a lot addition to the rear of the adjacent lands located at 1475 Cedar Spring Road. The proposed severed lands contain a 294 square meter storage shed and paved driveway area. The proposed retained lands at 1441 Cedar Spring Road will be approximately 8 hectares in area. And again, Scott Patterson is representing the applicants here, and both applicants are here as well in the event Scott needs them to refer to something.
Okay, Scott, if you would like to speak, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, good afternoon, committee. So again, Scott Patterson, Patterson Planning Consultants, representing Nevin and April Martin, who are the owners of 1441 Cedar Spring Road, and Chad and Shannon Rieger, who are the abutting property owner at 1475 Cedar Spring. And that's the portion of the property that the lot addition is to go towards. So as noted in the staff report, the land is 1 acre in size, and it would square off the Rieger property into a rectangular shape. As noted in the staff report as well, Township Council unanimously supported the zoning amendment to facilitate this proposal at their meeting on June 27th. The appeal period expired on July 26th, and despite similar comments that you've seen in the staff report from Township staff and the region, there was no appeal filed, and the zoning for this proposal is now in force and effect and recognizes the new lot sizes that are proposed. So support of this consent would ultimately result in the creation of the lots that are already recognized in the zoning and what's before the committee this evening or this afternoon. The staff report, I just wanted to note for committee, appears to carry over comments from the zoning process, which are incorrect. The lands of the lot addition are 0.47 hectares, which is 1 acre, whereas the staff report represents or reflects 0.65 hectares or 1.6 acres. So there is a difference naturally between 1.6 and 1 acre, and I wanted to draw that to committee's attention. Similar to the report, fails to acknowledge that the zoning was unanimously approved and supported by council for the 1 acre lot addition, and that the existing building that is included on the lot addition lands. The staff report makes no mention that this building is solely owned by Rieger, so the people that own 1475 that the lot addition is to be conveyed to. And that building is accessory to their residential use. So it's not owned or used by the Martin family. The lot addition is to convey the existing building on site to the people that actually use it. Staff report doesn't mention that the lot addition area is at a considerably lower elevation than the abutting farm and will not be used by the Martins going forward as part of their farming operations. So when council considered these options, they supported the 1 acre lot addition. Council was clear to note that if the lot addition was in a different configuration or a different shape, essentially going the opposite direction or taking more land out of the Martin property, that they would not support the application. But as it essentially squares off and completes the Rieger property, it made sense. The building is 100% owned by the Riegers, as I noted, and as accessory building. Again, council was made aware of this, and it made sense to them. And ultimately, they passed the implementing zoning, which has survived the appeal period. If the consent is not supported, then we have zoning right now, which is in force and effect, that does not align with the way the properties are today. So ultimately, I'm here on behalf of the two property owners, both of which are here and are very interested in this naturally, to ask the committee to recognize the same way that Township Council did, that this is a minor lot addition to recognize and correct an existing condition. There is no impact to the arable farmland on the Martin property or to their operations. And as such, I would ask committee to grant provisional consent and support the proposal. And if the committee was willing to do so, I have been furnished with a copy of draft conditions that would be applicable if the committee was to grant the provisional consent. I would ask the condition number 1 not be included. And the reason for that is that it imposes a requirement for us to do a survey and try and recognize the setbacks for the existing farm cluster buildings on the Martin property. As I noted, we recently went through a rezoning application just completed in June. And if this was to be dealt with, if there was any concerns with the locations of the Martins buildings, that should have came up through the rezoning process, as ultimately we would have dealt with any deficiencies or anything at that time. So to me, that condition just seems like a redundant condition. It would force additional costs on the Martins to have those buildings all surveyed. It's quite clear that the buildings are well removed from the lot addition area, would have no impact on the lot addition, and I think would clearly meet setbacks in an agricultural zone. So with all that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions. Clearly, there's a disconnect between what I believe is appropriate and what township staff and regional staff think is appropriate for this, but township council ultimately saw fit that this was appropriate and did support it unanimously. And I hope that the committee does as well. But if there's any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer them for a committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on behalf of the applicant, either the Martins or the Riggers? Okay, hearing none. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? Or to staff, I guess, would be fine as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Linda?
Again, Mr. Patterson or our planner, just curious, I'm honest, I took a look at this and I really don't have a concern with the lot line adjustment, but I do have a question because the comments seem to focus a lot on the PPS and the size of the ag parcel, which I understand. Is the current agricultural parcel, does it meet the PPS requirements for lot size now, before we take away the 1 acre?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take a stab at that before David. The PPS does not specify specific lot sizes. There's no minimum lot areas in the PPS. There's
Oh,
no,
not anymore. Okay.
there's no size requirements for a farm. Basically, what it tries to promote and encourage is usable farm properties, maintain agriculture, don't impact agriculture, keep as much arable farmland as possible. And in my opinion, I think we do that. And I think the staff report acknowledges that as well, that the arable amount of farmland is not being reduced. So I don't want to get into an argument with staff. I would just say that if there was a real concern with the PPS and consistency with the PPS, the region, as in their role as an ambassador for the province and their role as dealing with a lot of things on behalf of the province, would have objected to the zoning. And I like to think that they're really objecting to it. They would have had a staff member here today to object to it as well. So I know what they put in writing. I've read it. I do disagree naturally on behalf of my clients. But yeah, I do believe the application is consistent with the PPS and it did survive the zoning. So I will just leave that for committee and if there's any other question regarding that.
Okay, thank you. David, I saw that you had your hand up.
Through the chair, I would just echo Scott's comments with regard to the PPS. It doesn't specify a minimum lot size for farm parcels. However, our local zoning bylaw does. It's typically 40 hectares is what we consider to be a proper farm for new lot creation. But this is not new lot creation. This is a lot line adjustment, which is a different matter that we evaluate versus new lot creation. I will note that the existing farm parcel is already undersized as per that 40 hectare minimum, but I don't have anything further to add at this point. So.
Okay.
Thank you, David. That was what I was trying to get at. Is it already undersized? I appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any further questions from committee members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
am I allowed to? I just wanted to,
Yes,
sorry,
go
and I won't do this again, but I just wanted to recognize that that council was made aware of that as well, that a minimum farm parcel size is typically 40 hectares. But the zoning does recognize the 2 lot areas that are proposed now. So council unanimously did support the undersized farm product that would result from this. So just so that's clear. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, question member Fletcher.
And this is through to Mr. Gundrum. When this was before Woolwich Council, the zone change application, did the region approve, disapprove? Did they make comments about the zone change? And are those comments in keeping with the comments that they made today?
Through the chair, member Fletcher, the region did respond to the zoning. They were not supportive of the zoning at that time. The comments that they put forth to the Committee of Adjustment with respect to the severance that would implement the existing site-specific zoning that was approved by council, those regional comments before you now are very consistent with what they provided to council regarding the rezoning that's now been approved. So the region's been essentially consistent in their opinion on the matter. So,
and since it's a relatively short level amount of comments that's here for our review for the variance or for this application, so was there more comments that they made when it came to the zone change application about the regional official plan?
through the chair, member Fletcher, the comments were essentially the same with respect to the zoning versus the severance. They essentially took the same track on the zoning that they did with respect to the severance. They quoted the same policy sections in the ROP, and they quoted the same sections of the PPS across both sets of comments. So,
and just one last question about the zone change application that did go to Woolwich Council. In doing that, what was the overall view of what was going to happen with the lands and how the lands were to be merged if there was to be a severance?
through the chair, member Fletcher, the overall view is that these lands, as intended by the applicant's proposal, would be essentially used for a non-farm purpose. They contain an accessory Quonset hut structure that the residents of 1475 Cedar Spring Road currently, our understanding was they lease from their owners to the east for their own personal use. And essentially these lands would in essence be used for a non-farm purpose to support the existing residential use at 1475 Cedar Spring Road.
Okay, so there was never any intent to create a new building lot of any kind.
That's correct. There
Okay.
was never any intent to do that. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair. Just as a point of,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, just as a point of clarity,
Yep.
the land is owned by Martins. And there is a current lease arrangement between the two parties, but the building is owned by Rieger. So the building isn't owned by Martins and leased from them. The building is actually owned by Rieger. Just there is a distinction, so I just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
so on that point alone, can I just ask a further question of clarification? So was there a building permit for this building?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that the building, and again, this was discussed in front of council, the building was inadvertently built on the property of the Martins. To the best of my knowledge, as confirmed by the owners, the township was made aware of it at that time. There was a suggestion that a lease arrangement be entered into, which has been the case for the last 10 years. So the application that went to council for the zoning and the application before the committee was a direct result of a letter from the township about potential uses of the building for a commercial business and stuff. We've addressed all that. It's not for commercial business. It's used for personal use. And while we're trying to clean things up and make sure that everything's on site and legal, that forced the application for the rezoning, that forced the application for the consent, and that's why it's before you today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, member Fletcher? That clarifies for now. Okay, Member Dixon waiting patiently.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff with respect to the revised recommendation and the condition number 1 that Mr. Patterson referenced. Just curious as to why that was included. Because it is the retained lands, and we're not dealing with the retained lands, we're dealing with the severed parcels. So I'm just curious as to why that's in there, or why that was being requested.
Through the chair, Member Dixon, it's a standard condition that we would apply for severances involving a lot addition. Although, upon further discussion here tonight, I'm not of the opinion that it's absolutely necessary to ensure successful completion of the severance in this case, especially with respect to the retained lands. Typically, we include that condition to make sure that we're completing the severance and we're not creating any setback issues with respect to the new confirmed lot boundaries. So, does that answer your question,
Yep.
Member Dixon?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any further questions from staff or the applicant from committee members? Okay, not seeing any hands up. Nancy, is there any members of the public here?
No, Stephen, there's no members of the public for this application.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, committee, how would you like to deal with this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that consent application B05-2023 concerning the property known municipally as 1441 Cedar Spring Road, which is to sever a portion of abutting land in the agricultural zone having an area of approximately 4,070 square meters containing a detached accessory structure for the purposes of a lot addition to the abutting lands known municipally as 1475 Cedar Spring Road be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the planning report, with the exception of the first condition be removed that the owner applicant submit a copy of a survey to the township demonstrating that the lots and buildings on the retained portion conform to zoning. So then the remaining conditions would be renumbered and there would be 6 conditions in total.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion from other committee members? Seconded by Member Fletcher. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Discussion from committee members about the motion. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. I'll call the motion then. As read, as stated, those in favor, please raise your hand. And opposed? Okay, that is carried 3-1. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to remind the applicant that the last day of appeal expires on September 6th, 2023. Thank you for participating in the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your video, please.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Okay, Nancy, next application.
Yeah, so we're going to move now into sign variance component of the meeting. So we have one sign variance application this evening. It's application 1-2023 for numbered company 203-1057 Ontario Ltd for vacant lands on Victoria Street North, which are northeast of Shant Station Road. The lands are zoned agricultural and are currently vacant. The applicant is proposing to install a new billboard sign on the subject lands and is requesting relief from the following sign bylaw regulations. Section 7.6, relief to advertise a business located in Kitchener, being Victoria Street Market, whereas the bylaw only allows the advertising of businesses or activities in the township. Section 7.7, relief to allow a minimum of 3 businesses on the billboard, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 4. And section 7.14, relief to allow a new billboard sign approximately 880 meters from an existing billboard sign, whereas the bylaw requires a 1,000-meter separation. The new billboard sign is proposed to advertise the Stone Crock Bakery, and Victoria Street Market. And this evening is Gary from Signs Galore, as
Hello.
well as, hey Gary, as well as Bo, who is representing Victoria Street Market. So Gary, if you'd like to review the application.
Yes, so we're trying to get a variance for a billboard sign that's going to be in Woolwich, that's going to be advertising the Victoria Street Market, as well as Stone Crock and Stone Crock Bakery. Bo has been selling and supplying services and products to the Woolwich area, and he also owns a parcel of land in Woolwich that he can actually farm some of his produce there. That's where the billboard's going to be. So he's hoping that he can utilize that property to also advertise his products on that property.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any members of committee with questions directly to the applicant? Member Ziegler?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant. I'm just curious how when we require a minimum of 4 businesses and you're asking for down to 3, like, are all the businesses advertised at once, or is it one of those things that rotates through different advertisements monthly, or how does that work? I take it it's just a big wooden sign up in a field, right?
Correct, and it's got the 3 main core businesses on there. It's not getting changed at any point anytime soon. The idea is that it draws attention to those 3 companies, the Stone Crock Bakery, and the market.
Okay, so those, yeah, sorry, a bit of a follow-up. Those sound like all 3 for the township, but then what is the further part of the application where there was a City of Kitchener business that you had advertised on there?
Yeah, so the Victoria Street Market is actually located in Kitchener.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good for me. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry, I think that's probably Victorian 4L Road is the one you're talking about in Kitchener.
Yes, correct.
okay, any further questions from committee members? I don't see any hands up.
This is Bo. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead, Bo.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to add, like, it's I own Victoria Street Market. I grew up at the St. Jacobs Market. So I worked there for 25 years managing a stand. And then the opportunity came up in Kitchener to build a market there. And then I own the parcel that we want to put the billboard on. And we're just purchasing Stone Crock and St. Jacobs Grill in St. Jacobs, which we're really excited about. So that bakery will supply our store. We supply Evie Manor Milk, Silver Maple Farms, Shady Grove. All our turkeys come from Shady Grove, which is in Woolwich. So we're very much a small boutique market that carries a lot of fresh Woolwich products. Just to give you guys a sort of a reasoning why there's a synergy and I'm tying the 2 communities together, in case you're one, like, to give you the simple answer of what I do, if that helps in your decision making. So
Okay, Bo,
yeah.
thank you for the clarity. I think that makes it clear for sure. Okay, any further questions for either representative of the applicants from committee members? Member Ziegler?
Great. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant again. So let's just say that I like what you said about the Kitchener market being advertised, but I guess if we were to approve something like this, then that's going to give you kind of an access to advertise a Kitchener business. That's not going to be the case, and that's not your intention. It's only the only Kitchener business you plan on advertising on the sign would be that Kitchener market.
Correct. Correct. And we could add, like, I know you said 4, we could add, like, I've been dealing with EB Manor since we opened like 11 years ago. Like, they would gladly go on the sign. I could put a 4th business on the sign from Woolwich also, if that helps. The reason why we chose 3 is we didn't want the sign to be too many things, and then it's not necessarily so clear when you're driving by if there's too many things on one sign. But we could add another business on there, like Shady Grove would gladly advertise their maple syrup on there too. But we just thought 3 was kind of a nice looking sign without being too messy. But that was sort of our thought process.
Okay, question from committee member Fletcher.
Yes. So what's the sign going to look like? Some of the billboard signs that are allowed within Woolwich Township have directional signals on them, or, arrows, etc. So what do you propose that this sign is going to look like?
Do you have access to the proposal? It's within the, in the.
But if you add a 4th,
Oh, that was the problem. It might get a little bit too much. We were never asked to propose a 4th. We're just trying to get relief from having the 4th one on there. That's one of the things that we're trying to get relief for.
right? So I guess what I'm asking now is the intent to have a 4th or not have a 4th? Because that would relieve you some of the concerns regarding the actual variance that's being requested.
Yes, we just feel it'll look too cluttered if we do that. I'm not sure if it's going to help people driving down the road with the visibility and being able to read too many things.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Member Fletcher, does that answer your question?
Well, it puts kind of a controversy between the applicant and the person who's wants the advertising. So I'm a bit concerned. I mean, I have seen the sign. I mean, I can see that it could be added somewhere, whether the main logo is shrunk or whatever, and the 4th person is added. I like the concept of eating locally and using local products. I mean, that's, to me, is a good thing. In order to not have to do a particular variance, if you can find a 4th, I'd be in favor of that.
Okay. Gary, I have a question. Just to confirm that all 3 businesses are owned by the same person, the applicant, you own them all, or Bo?
Bo does, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there would at least be some consistency that the sign is from one person.
Right.
Right? And you're not adding a 4th business? You don't have anything else to tell us?
No, not right now. No.
Okay, Member Dixon has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to the recommendation. So, I mean, we're talking about a 4th, but as I see it, the recommendation is the minimum number of businesses should be 4. Relief is being asked for 3. And then the other piece is the distance, which isn't a huge difference. But then I'm reading down and there's the part about not allowing the Victoria Street Market advertising on there because it's outside of the township. So now we're down to 2. We're not even talking variance for 3, we're talking a variance for 2. So I'm a little, I don't know how to address this because yeah, it's a little bit of a conundrum for me with the fact that we're asking for 3, and we're really wanting to take another one out.
Okay, thank you. Member Ziegler?
Sorry, are we through kind of discussions and are we ready for a possible motion or are we?
I haven't asked, sorry, I haven't asked for any members of the public yet. I don't know if there is, but if we're through with questions, I could, Nancy, is there anybody here to speak about the application from the public?
No, Stephen, again, there's no members of the public for this application.
Okay, so I think we're at the point, if there's no more questions to the applicant, what does the committee want to do with this application?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilor, Member Ziegler.
So I'm ready to make a motion. I feel that being that the Victoria Street Market is basically stocked with Woolwich goods and stuff like that, I don't see an issue with Kitchener people bringing their money and profiting back to our township. So I want to make a motion that signed variance application SV01 2023, all 3 recommendations be approved. Sorry, all 3 variations.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder for that motion from committee members? There's a seconder, Member Dixon. Okay, and follow-up question, Member Dixon?
Just point of clarification then, just to the motion to get it on the floor to discuss. So we are then putting forward in the motion, just to clarify, Member Ziegler's motion. It talks about that we're going to 3 instead of 4. It's going to be 830 meters away instead of the 1,000, and the recommendation is permitting the business that is outside of the township to be on the sign.
So my motion would include yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Discussion from committee members about the motion.
Stephen, if I could just clarify
Yeah,
on the
go ahead.
motion as well, there's also one condition noticed with that being an MTO sign permit. So just want to clarify that the condition is going with the proposal as well.
Sorry,
Charles?
yes, so okay, so maybe I'll do that. I'll make a motion that sign variance application SV01 2023. Variance 7.7 to allow the minimum number of businesses represented on a billboard sign to be 3, whereas the sign bylaw requires 4. Section 7.14 to allow a billboard sign to be located approximately 830 meters away from an existing billboard sign, whereas the sign bylaw requires a minimum separation distance of 1,000 meters. And also that, I don't even really know how to say it, but that the Kitchener Market is approved to be one of the 3 businesses allowed on the sign, even though it's without outside of the township boundary. And then, yes, I would say all that be approved to condition A, that the applicants be issued MTO sign permit for the billboard sign proposed on the subject lands. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. And we take that as just clarifying the motion, Nancy?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And Member Dixon, that's okay with
I
you?
will continue. Yes, I will
Okay.
continue to second that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, discussion on the motion that's on the floor. Member Fletcher has her hand up.
I still would like to see 4 on the sign. And so then we get 3 businesses from Woolwich and 1 not. And I'd be much more comfortable with that. But if somebody's not prepared to do that or make it as a friendly amendment, then I will be voting against it. But I'm not opposed necessarily to the 830 square meters. I'm not opposed to Victoria Street Market. I just would like to see 4 businesses on the sign and keeping with the sign bylaw provisions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any discussion on Member Fletcher's comments?
So Bo mentioned that if it is necessary in order to get the permit, if you really want one more logo on there, that Bo would say that we would
I
accommodate.
think, yeah, I think that we can do that, Gary. We'll figure out a way to either work with Shady Grove or EB Manor. I know they were both expressed interest in joining in, so I think we can figure something out. If you think so too, Gary, I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, I don't love the idea, but hey, so I've been wrong before. It might look amazing with it on there, and yeah, I'm fine.
So, sorry, so I think though we've had a motion and 2 out of 3 of us
Yep.
are kind of on board with it, so I don't think we necessarily need to go further into the 4th. It seems like you might get a pass with what we have, right? So I think it's just getting really confusing right now with what we're doing and what's happening here. I would suggest we go through with the motion that I put on the floor, and if it gets denied, then we can potentially talk about a new motion to include the 4 or something.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that we should limit the discussion at this point to committee members. The motion is on the floor. So is there any further discussion on the original motion that we have a mover and seconder for? Not seeing any, then I will call the question. Those in favor of that original motion? Opposed? That is carried 3-1. I just want to remind the applicant that the last day of an appeal expires on September the 6th, 2023. Thank you for participating in the meeting. And please remember to mute your microphone and turn off your computer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Okay, Nancy, is that it for?
That is
Yep.
it for the applications. Yes,
Okay.
so we have the minutes of July 10th.
Right. So have all the committee members had the opportunity to review the minutes as circulated from the previous meeting held on July 10th, 2023? And if so, are there any changes required? Nothing at
They're
all?
looking for
Okay.
me.
All right. I see a hand there. Member
I'll
Dixon?
move approval of the July meeting minutes as circulated.
Okay, seconder
Second them.
for that? Member
Charles.
Ziegler? Okay, mover and seconder. Those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So I think, Nancy, is that it?
That is it for this evening's meeting.
This
Yes.
evening?